Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi, everyone. It's Paula Edgar, your host of Branding Room Only, and I'm very, very excited for my conversation today with my guest, Michele Meyer-Shipp. She is the Chief Executive Officer for Justice Success Worldwide, a global nonprofit. Michele has spent over a decade working in the C-suite and human resource and DEI leadership roles, and she also spent 12 years practicing employment law. Prior to her role at Justice Success, she was the head of people and culture at Major League Baseball, and Michele is on the board of the LPGA and the chair of the board for the Fritz Pollard Alliance, both sports organizations. As you can tell, she is a thought leader in talent and DEI space, and she's won several awards and been featured in many, many news and media platforms. In her free time, whenever that is, she enjoys spending time with her family, her husband, and her 3 young adult sons. Michele, welcome to the Branding Room.
Thank you, Paula. I'm really happy to be here. Happy New Year to you.
Yay, Happy New Year to you. So tell me, I start off my conversation with everybody about what is a personal brand? What does the personal brand mean to you?
Yeah. So, I think about this a lot, and I constantly have this discussion with my 3 young adult sons. Mm-hmm. And it is really around the way you want people to see you and be received by people. Mm-hmm. So I think about it as for me, personal brand is both professional and personal. Mm-hmm. And it really is kind of folks looking at me and sizing me up from within the first 30 seconds that they meet me. Mm-hmm. So how I present myself, how I present myself to the world, visually, verbally, all the things. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, I think about it with everything that I do.
I mean, that's like a textbook. I love it. That's a perfect definition of it. So speaking of how you're perceiving, tell me in 3 words or phrases, how would you describe yourself?
I thought about this one a lot because I was trying to think of 3 words that I think everybody in my house would agree with. Here's where I landed.
Okay.
Driven, because no matter what I decide I'm going to do, whether it's personally or professionally, I am committed and driven to making it happen.
Okay.
I am an empath of epic proportions, sometimes to my detriment. I care deeply about human beings, and I've never met a stranger. And I think 3 is people-oriented. I love people. I love meeting people, talking to people, helping people. I'm curious about people. I'm curious about cultures. So I would say those 3 words: driven, an empath, and people-oriented.
I love that. I'm going to take my host privilege and add one because I know you. And I would say excellent. I think that whenever I think of you, I think excellence in how you show up and what you do and what you say is excellent. So I'm adding that one to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to receive it and own it. And I'm going to tell my kids you said
it. There's a recording. It's going to be fine.
Yes, excellent.
So do you have a favorite quote or motto?
I do. And it's actually funny because over the years, I've had a bunch. And as I've gotten a little bit older and a little bit wiser, I'm going to tell you the one that has risen to the top. And here's how it reads. It says, success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. And that's a quote from Maya Angelou.
Oh,
and that speaks powerfully to me.
That's a good one. And that does speak really deeply. And it's also like a good encapsulation of branding too.
Yes, it is.
Everything is aligning. Yeah.
Right? It is because, success can be defined many ways, and it's often defined differently from different people in different ways. But when I think about it, this keeps me honest to myself, my core, my authentic self, and realizing that if I am happy and comfortable with where I am, what I'm doing, and how I'm doing it, that right there in and of itself is success beyond measure.
That's a fantastic quote. I'm going to definitely take that one. Okay, so give me your other ways of being inspired. Do you have a hype song? So this is a song that when they're going to get full 100% Michele's walking in the door, it's playing in your head. Or if you're having a bad day, you got a playlist to get yourself back, and it can be the same song or different songs. What's that?
This is actually funny. So my song is Jump Around by House of Pain.
I love it.
There's a story connected to how this became my hype song.
Okay.
So in law school, like it was a couple of weeks before the bar exam, I went to a party. Now, I shouldn't have been at a party. but I was, because I was fried from studying.
Mhm.
And the song came on, and I knew the song and I liked the song. But for some reason, I was moved beyond measure to the jump part. And I was jumping, 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 dancing, dancing, dancing. Girl, I sprained my ankle.
Oh no.
And I ended up kind of wrapped up with my ankle for several weeks. But the joke in my family, every time that song comes on, is that's the song that gets her going. And it truly still today is the
Mhm.
song that gets me going. So Jump Around, House of Pain. That's it.
That is hilarious. Not the pain part,
No, not the pain part,
the
but
jump part. That's a good one. Okay. Tell me about little Michele. Where did you grow up and how do you think that shaped you?
so I grew up, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. And when I was probably in high school, we moved to
Mhm.
Long Island, Westbury,
Mhm.
Long Island. And, I think the empath and the people oriented part of me really comes from that experience because I grew up in a close knit community of family and friends.
Mhm.
And I remember, I have vivid memories of being at my grandma's house
Mhm.
on Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. And
Mhm.
it was summertime, the fire hydrant was going, all the kids were playing in the water, folks were hanging out the window, waving and saying hi. We were throwing the ball, playing frisbee, all the things. And I
Mhm.
really have fond memories of kind of that community
Mhm.
being there. And every time we made a move, we moved to Long Island when I was in high school. We moved to New Jersey when I went to college.
Mhm.
We always seemed to land with a network and a community of people,
Mhm.
such that I just really love meeting people, communing with people, sharing with people, and bringing people together. I think that really is it. And my parents are really warm, open, welcoming folks.
Mhm.
And I think that grounded me for my path ahead and the things that make me tick.
I don't know how I did not know that we have this in common. I did not know you were from Brooklyn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was sitting here like, what? Like,
Yeah.
I had
Uh-huh.
no idea that you were from Brooklyn. Is your
Yes.
family Caribbean?
No. Mm-mm.
And you were on Flatbush Avenue?
I was on Flatbush Avenue. Yes, and it's funny because it's funny how you have certain memories that stick with you and things you can't remember.
Yeah.
I actually remember vividly being on Flatbush Avenue, moving to Ocean Parkway. I remember every distinct move. And I remember moving to Westbury going, why are we moving all the way out here? Right. So definitely now we know we've got that in common.
Yes. Yes, we have that. And also my family moved to Jersey, but they moved when I was in school. So, but yes, good to know. Good to know. So going from there, then ending up in Jersey in terms of your path and going to school, tell me then about your career path. So being in Jersey and then going to school, tell me about that.
So it's actually a pretty funny story. I majored in criminal justice in college,
Mhm.
and I thought I wanted to be an FBI agent.
Oh.
So when I graduated from college, I actually took a job as a private investigator with a private investigation company. And I lasted about 4 months as a private investigator. And here's the problem. It ties right back to the way we started this conversation.
Okay.
I was too friendly, too open, too transparent with folks to do the undercover PI thing. So when you work as an undercover PI, they put you in an establishment undercover and you have to tell a fake story about who you are and where you came from. Let's
Mhm.
just say that didn't go very well for me. And the very people I was supposed to be investigating, I befriended, and it became impossible for me, to be neutral in all the things. So I graciously stepped away from that job.
Mhm.
And that led me to kind of reassess, okay, where do you want to be in this space of law? Clearly, you do not want to be any kind of undercover anything. And I was afraid to be a police officer. So I said, you know what? Maybe I'll explore this thing called law school and see what that's all about. And to make a really long story short, I went to law school. I actually loved law school. I don't know many people that say that, but I absolutely loved it.
Mhm.
And left law school and ended up after a clerkship joining a firm that allowed me to kind of rotate through different practice areas, which was a beautiful thing. I discovered, no surprise based on this conversation, that my passion was for employment law. because it related to people.
And investigations.
And investigations, right? So I had the investigation part.
Yes.
I could dig into things. And I was trying to help people solve people-related problems, right? I didn't do well with the other aspects of, managing different practices within the law firm. But I practiced employment law for about 12 years, worked at a couple of law firms, worked at a couple of corporations as an in-house counsel. And it was when I was actually at Prudential as in-house counsel that I started navigating my way into volunteerism around the employee resource groups and the law department's diversity council and things like that. And I found myself convening people around, different events and things of that nature. And before you knew it, I got invited to apply for the job at Prudential as the Global Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And I applied for that job. I took that job, and it changed the whole trajectory of my career, because I then found myself as, kind of a strategic partner to the business on navigating kind of HR, talent, engagement, and culture issues. So I was no longer doing the legal work per se, but I was doing more of the HR people work. And that led me down a path where I had the privilege of working at a number of organizations, doing HR leadership, talent, culture, DEI work. And I really enjoyed it because, again, at the core, I'm a people-oriented person. So I really love the work. And ironically, I remember being at KPMG as the chief diversity officer. And I got itchy palms. I was like, okay, I feel like I can do more. I feel like I can do something bigger. What is it? And I got a call to go to Major League Baseball to apply for the chief people and culture officer. And what that did for me, as far as my learning and professional development and growth, was it gave me full ownership over HR, DEI, and office operations. So it took me out of my traditional kind of talent zone. And now I'm overseeing facilities, office ops, all of HR, all of the systems, operational stuff, policy, everything, and the DEI work. And I did it during the pandemic, in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder. So you can imagine all the things that came with that. It was a really great experience, and I loved being there. And then, honestly, I think I became one of those folks that became, what did they call it? The process of reevaluation. As we were coming around the other side of the pandemic, and people were just kind of awakening to who they were and what they wanted to do and what they wanted their legacy to be. My son actually said to me, my youngest son said to me, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to college in September. And you're going to be all alone, you and Dad. We're not here anymore. Like, what's your next chapter look like? Empty nest." And it got me to thinking, wow, you know what? I don't have a house full of young men anymore. Their friends aren't here. I'm not coaching and counseling them anymore. Like, what am I going to do to actually really pour into people and help them live their best lives in a really meaningful way? And I decided to take a sabbatical, if you will, and reassess what I wanted to do to give back. And ironically, and you could say it was serendipity, I got a call about the opportunity to be the CEO of this global nonprofit called Dress for Success Worldwide. And I remember thinking, oh, I know that place. That's a place where you donate your clothes. And I read the job description, and it was very heavily oriented around a people leader who loved engaging and interacting with human beings of all walks of life, who had strategic leadership skills, legal skills, HR skills, business skills, all the things. And I saw it as an opportunity for growth. I was attracted by the people-oriented and mission-driven focus of the work. And I also saw in it the opportunity, again, for me as a person to grow professionally, to take it to the next level. And then I researched the organization, and I was actually really surprised to discover, oh, wow, this organization really is global, 24 countries. Wow, it really does have a lot of affiliates, over 130. And they actually don't just do close. It's a
Mhm.
full career development, job readiness, skills programming, platform that they offer. So I decided to apply for the job, went through the process, got the job. And Paula, can you believe that next month it will be 3 years I've been in this job?
I mean, it's just, it's gone. I was thinking about this. It's just gone by so quickly.
So
Um,
fast.
But again, it also feels like, even in hearing you talk about the progress in every role, that it feels like the culmination of so many skills that you have in one role, where you can do a lot of the places of your zones of genius in one role, which is lovely. A couple things I want to pull out from what you said that I think speak to me a lot when it comes to branding, which is that you have a growth mindset. Right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you call it itchy palms, whatever it is, but he's wanting you to do and be and go more. And I love that your son was a catalyst for you really thinking about what the next step was going to be, because it brings in, the roles you have, right? They can see from you, like, what you need to do something.
Yes.
That
Yes.
means he knows who you are. And you taking that baton and saying, I'm going to think about this in a little bit different way. So when you're iterating your brand, it requires feedback. It requires people who know you, requires you to have an open mind. And then a little bit of that serendipity, right? And the world to say, oh, here's this actual role that's going to do all those things. And because of you being in that role and having all those networks you already have, and I'm sure many other people, thought of it differently. Like, it was like, oh, this is not just donating dresses, right? It is a lot more. So you brought the skill set, but also visibility in a whole different way to what the organization can and continues to do. So I love that. Tell me what your process is, if you have one, or what you can reflect on when you've made each pivot.
Yes.
You said sabbatical, so there's a little bit of break in there, but is there anything that you consistently do in order to pivot from thing to thing?
Yes, absolutely. And the key is that 100 to 120-day listening journey
Mm,
that
mm,
you go on. And I mean, you know this, Paula, because you've been with me through this ride. But I mean, I've gone from industry to industry, sector to sector, all very, very, very different. And knowing that, I always start with, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do nothing in that first 3 to 4 months other than listen and learn. Listen and learn. And I'm going to tell you, every time I've done it, it has been magical, because it really is. You're doing a listening tour, you're meeting and talking to people. What you're really doing is a SWOT analysis.
mhm,
You are really hearing from people what's working at this organization, what's not working, what does amazing success look like to them? What are the threats to the organization? And each time, actually, I'm getting goosebumps when I think about this, because every time I've done it, when
mhm,
I sit down at the end and I review my notes,
mhm,
the themes from person to person, the same comments, the same types of feedback keep coming out. And what happens is that listening journey
mhm,
turns into the basis for your strategic plan.
mhm,
And when you go back to the organization, and in this organization, as the CEO, to
mhm,
come out of that listening journey, having spoken to our affiliates, the staff at Worldwide, volunteers, corporate partners, et cetera, I go back to them and say, hey, I heard you, I saw you, I get you. And based on what you've told me, I'd like to propose the following strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years going forward. And they all look at it and go, wow, she heard us, and she sees what we suggested reflected in here. And
mhm,
they're on board, they're engaged, and we're all aligned around the journey forward. It's been powerful. So I encourage folks, and as a lawyer, by the way, that initially was a really hard thing for me to do, because I was always called into a place when something had to be fixed, right? Called in to solve a problem, called in to hear it quickly and say, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do it now.
mhm,
This process, and I learned this when I took that role at Prudential as CDO. My leader there said to me, the first thing you need to do, Michele, you need to
mhm,
talk to all the business presidents. You
mhm,
need to understand what's going on in their business. And from there, you figure out what to do. That's where I first learned this process.
mhm,
And it is powerful. And that has actually driven me all the way through. So every time I talk to my affiliates, every time I talk to my team, I always link back to the
mhm,
core tenets of our mission and our strategic plan. And everything that we do is aligned to those things.
I love, love, love that. And I'm glad I asked the question because you just pulled out something that's so important. People tend to, particularly when they're coming into a new role, they go into a new role and like, I'm the smartest thing that's ever happened. Here's all the information that I have. And it's like, actually, when I used to coach people, I would tell them when they started a new job, don't refer to the old job. Like,
Yeah.
you see people who'll be like, well, at my last place, I did this. And I'm like, nobody wants to hear that. You are not there
No.
anymore. They want to hear what you're going to do here. And they want to hear that you are now on this team and you're playing with this team. But you listening, huge. And
Yeah.
also understanding that stakeholders have to be able to give you their feedback for them to feel fully heard and fairly treated is such an important piece of success anywhere. So I love, love, love that as a strategy. Look, I mean, I could have just fed you that line, but you had it already. You had it already. So tell me, how do you think you as the leader at Just for Success impacts the organization and achieving its mission?
So I think about it two ways. I think about the impact that I'm able to have at a personal level, because I really am wholeheartedly all over this mission. I mean, it really is about changing women's lives, helping them transform their lives. And I am personally committed to that. So when I show up authentically and fully and engage with our women, they feel that. So the notes and the letters that I get of gratitude around that has kind of played back to me. Okay, Michele, like they see you, they get you, and they know that you truly wholeheartedly support them at the core. So there's the connection to the mission work and the impact of that work. But then from a business standpoint, I really have attached a huge kind of I brought operational excellence to our mission, right? So a lot, and I've never worked in a nonprofit before. So this was a new adventure for me, because most of the people I come into contact with, everybody is connected to the mission and the passion of the work, but they may not have had the operational experience to know how to drive the business operations, right? Or how to create and drive a strategy. So, obviously I bring the hard work, but I also am bringing the operational process, excellence, policy, procedure to it in a way that we have a roadmap, we have a game plan, we have a North Star, if you will, so that while we're doing the passion work, we make sure the train stays on the tracks. Everybody is going in the right direction towards the same destination. So it's both that heart work, that mind work, and that operational kind of logistical excellence work.
I think when I think about the time in which you had your tenure, there's been a lot going on in the world, which makes the work that you do and that mission-oriented stuff and the importance of the organization, some even more so a priority for our focus and our support. What, if any, were any surprises or any sort of experiences that you had, sort of doing this work in these 3 years that you might want to share? Anything?
So the biggest surprise to me was that the organization itself looked so big from the outside. It felt so big from the outside because of our footprint and all the things. But what I realized is that a medium-sized nonprofit operates with a very, very, very small and lean team. So it's almost like the Wizard of Oz and, the wizard behind the curtain. Like you're thinking there's this huge, big leader there and he's doing all these amazing things. And then you go behind the curtain and it's this little dude on a microphone trying to project his voice out for the world to hear. I was most surprised that this organization has been able to impact and change so many lives with such lean resources. And I mean talent, money, everything. I mean, so lean. And I had to figure out, coming from big corporate where I had access to all the things, I had to figure out, okay, Michele, it's time to get real. Like you need to roll up your sleeves. You need to get scrappy. You need to get resourceful. And you need to figure out how you're going to make this happen without having the kinds of things you're used to having to make stuff get done. So that has been the biggest surprise. And I remain just inspired, proud, and amazed every day at not only my team at the worldwide office, but also at the women and men who run our affiliates, because our affiliates are seeing women coming in every day in need with all sorts of stories, from the most horrific, right, to somebody who may just need something simple. But many of those affiliates are run by like one person, two people, and they rely on volunteers to show up, who often don't show up, and things of that nature. So that's been the biggest surprise. And I have a completely newfound appreciation of the world of nonprofit leadership and mission work, because it is not for the faint at heart at all.
It is definitely not. Having been on a lot of boards and still am on a lot of boards, and understanding that behind the scenes thing that Wizard of Oz comparison was a really good one, where it looks nice and shiny, and then behind you see that there's, there are folks who are doing a lot of different things, some within their space and some not within their space, and you're kind of just mishmashing things together in order for the mission to get met. But it works. And I was thinking about this before our interview, why, in my mind, Just for Success is such a big brand. And I have a couple of things that I'm thinking about. One is that it rhymes. Right, branding wise, the tagline, like it works out well because it rhymes, and we like things that rhyme. So that's one. Two, the mission is in the name, right? So it's like what we're doing. But for the most part, what people know about, it's the dress as the first thing, but the success part has multiple factors.
Yes.
And when I was thinking about this in relation to branding, I thought to myself, it is exactly that. Like when you describe what your brand is, it's like how people are going to experience you, whether you're saying anything or not first. But then the success piece is that you have the skill set and everything else that backs up what the dress is, so that you can have that success. And so that's just my I was like, I
like
love
that. Thank you for
connection
that.
of it. Like it is definitely that. So for the people who are listening or watching who only think of it as the donation piece, I think part of the power is how you lead the folks who are being helped to that success factor, right? And what that can mean for the world, because when you support women, you support the world. And so I love that it is worldwide, because we definitely need more support of women in all spaces, but definitely here. So anyway, that was my commercial for Just for Success.
No, thank you. But I really appreciate you thinking that through and seeing that. And that tells me a lot, because actually we're going through a brand refresh. So hearing that feedback is really helpful for a bunch of reasons that we'll talk about offline. But thank you for that.
Absolutely. And yes, look how the Lord works, because my favorite thing is being like, I have opinions on everything. So talk to me, since we're talking about volunteerism and leadership and board stuff. You also are a leader in other organizations in terms of your volunteerism space. We talked about the LPGA and also Fritz Pollard Alliance Foundation. Tell me about both of those and why they're important to you in terms of leadership.
Absolutely. So as you stated, I sit on the boards for the Ladies Professional Golf Association, the LPGA, and the Fritz Pollard Alliance. So I'll talk about the LPGA first. I was introduced to the game of golf and to the LPGA when I was at KPMG. And I remember when I was asked to go play a foursome, pick up a golf club, I was like, wait a minute, what? You want me to do what? And I was completely resistant to the idea, but I was forced to do it. And when I got out on that golf course with these three women that I didn't know in a foursome, and we spent the whole day together playing 18 holes and me trying to play 18 holes, I had a ball. I loved being outdoors. I loved the conversation with them. I made 4 new friends. Again, remember, people-oriented, love people. And I realized that it is true about the magic that happens on the golf course that I've heard everybody talking about my entire career. Relationships are built, friendships are established, and deals are made. And it's fun. It's outdoors. I love landscapes. I love scenery. So long story short, I fell in love with the experience and the game first. And then because of my role at KPMG at the time, I got introduced to the business of the LPGA and their mission work, not only to grow the game for their professionals, but to grow the game and expose others to the game from a community standpoint. And that spoke to me. So when I got a call one day from the then commissioner asking me, hey, you seem to have really gotten attached to us and the work that we're doing, and you seem really, would you be interested if an opportunity came along? I said yes. I went through the process. I got the seat. And ironically, I just celebrated my 3rd-year anniversary on the board. I've started my 4th year, and I'm the chair of the HR committee, and I sit on the legal and governance committee. And again, I love it because at the end of the day, I'm helping them with their mission work
Mhm.
connected to empowering women. And I'm able to apply my leadership experiences and lenses to all the things that we're doing and helping them execute a strategy. And what's been really cool about it for me is at Dress for Success, I built and am driving a strategy. At the LPGA, they've built and are driving a strategy. And I'm watching these two things happen simultaneously. And I'm actually seeing the synergies, the alignment. It's like, hey, wait a minute, that thing that's happening over there for me at Dress for Success, wow, it's good to know that's not unique to me. So I've learned, I've grown, I've built new friends, built new relationships. I absolutely love being on that board. It's been completely fulfilling and continues to be. The Fritz Pollard Alliance is an organization associated with professional football and the NFL, and they were founded years ago to help advance underrepresented talent on and off the football field. And that's been great. I've been the chair of that organization now for almost a year. I've been on the board for a couple of years. And my personal connection to that is I come from a football family. My brother-in-law played professional football for 8 years. He coached for one of the NFL teams. And 2 of my sons played football from 5 years old all the way up through and including now in college. And I love the game. I love the sport. And I love being attached to anything related to football. So I got introduced to Fritz through my NFL relationship. And there, again, it's a nonprofit doing mission work to support communities, et cetera. And it's aligned right to everything that I'm passionate about. So I've had a really great experience helping their executive director, Rod Graves, do all the amazing things he does to groom, prepare, and give access to talent that might not ordinarily have access to opportunities. And it literally ties directly back to my professional work and to my personal passion and commitment. So I'm really excited to be a part of that adventure as well.
I love that. I love the description of it and how you came to both of those things from a place of personal connection. And, oftentimes I think people, I was just having this conversation with somebody else, feel like they have to, separate the places in which they give from the things that bring them joy. And you don't. I think it actually works out a lot better for you when you have those multiple connections to the mission, vision, and impact of organizations that you're connected to. So I love that. And also shout out to you, Ma. Shout out to Marcel. Hi, we went to school together. So anyway, that's my little thing. Anyway, so we talked about your volunteerism. We talked about the work that you've done. What, in terms of lessons as a leader, would you say that you have learned about branding and how it's important to having leadership be impactful?
Yeah. I've learned a bunch of things, and it's funny. I have them written down because I often get asked this question, and I have a couple of things I'll share. I think the first thing is we always have to be mindful that we need to be on top of our game at all times. And that goes back to something you said earlier. It's about excellence. It's about remembering, and I tell my young men this all the time, my sons, I'm like, guys, people are watching you. You need to be on your game. It's something as simple as being on time. I'm like, look, on time is late and early is on time, and late is completely unacceptable. People are going to judge you if you don't show up on time. In your work product, check your punctuation, check your spelling, right? In whatever it is, excellence is required. So I think about it this way. As an employment lawyer, now as a business leader, I'm constantly thinking about what am I doing to stay on top of my game? What am I doing to stay on top of the ever evolving landscape for leaders, right? Technology is changing. You've got AI, you've got all these things happening. Every one of us needs to think about what are we doing to continue to grow? Like you said before, that growth mindset, what are we doing to grow so that we stay on top of our game with whatever it is that we're doing? So that's number one. The other thing I would say that I learned along the way that nobody told me is that you have to ask for what you want. I remember, girl, growing up, my parents used to keep your head down, do your work, everything's going to work out. Yeah, guys, you were right about that. That'll help me get the grades. That'll help me have the work product. But I actually have to ask for what I want and not assume that someone's going to hand it to me. I've been in too many rooms as an employment lawyer where people make assumptions about what other people want, but nobody ever bothers to ask the person what they want, and the person never bothers to tell the leaders what they want. So you have to speak up for yourself, advocate for yourself, and tell people what you want, or diplomatically ask for what you want. The worst thing they're going to tell you is no.
That right there, that snippet is going to be all over the internet, because it is literally, it's the lesson that I keep learning, but it's a present one for me most recently, because I had somebody say to me, someone who I was like, oh, they're my friend, they know me, right? And they were like, Paula, I've never thought about bringing you into my work because you've never asked me. And I was like, it was almost like a gut punch. And I thought to myself, well, you know what I do? Like literally, I'm like a butterfly everywhere. And they were like, yeah, but you've never asked. So I thought that you were fine, that you didn't need. And it was, I was like jaw dropped. And it reminds you that people think, like self-promotion is like, this terrible thing. Strategic self-promotion, not bragging, but being thoughtful is such an important thing. And people need to be reminded about who you are and how you add value in order for those things to align, to connect. So that sits very present for me in terms of that ask.
I get it. And isn't that ironic, right? You get to a point in your career when you think you don't have to ask anymore, but you always have to ask. And in different roles and different things, you have to ask in different ways, right? So for me, for example, now, like coming to nonprofit, I had to learn how to ask for money, right? That was new to me. It's still new to me. It still feels awkward, but I have to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's finding ways to ask for what you want and what you need is critical, and at a more junior level, it's something I talk to my sons about. My oldest son is 3 years into his, professional career. And every year when he sits down to do his performance evaluation, I'm like, son, when you write that evaluation, I need you to think about what are the things you think you need to continue to grow and develop. And when you sit down with your boss, you ask her if they will provide you with funding to go get training to do that thing. And he's like, no, son, you need to ask, because they're not just going to hand it to you.
Right.
So we have to ask. And then I think the other big one, I have two more big ones. One is to build strategic relationships, right? To really think about building your network. Even if, I have a lot of friends that are introverts and they don't want to be bothered and all the things. I'm like, no. You need to build a network. Mm-hmm. So I tell folks all the time to think about having an internal network, wherever it is that you work, and an external network. And that's a whole nother 1 hour conversation that you and I could have. And then finally, I would say to take strategic risks and stretch assignments, because I will tell you, I really do think it's how I'm sitting where I'm sitting today. Had I not raised my hand back at Prue when I was an employment lawyer and said, hey, I'll lead that committee, or I'll help that ERG do that thing. And I'll lead that global prudential initiative. It was me raising my hand, volunteering, stretch assignment to do things outside of my day job that had people see something in me that led to, hey, I think she would be a good global leader for this organization. And that in turn led to all of these other things.
So I want to break apart both of those things. I think they deserve a double click. People say your network is your net worth, right? Like the who you know. But what I can say when I think about your brand is that how you do it, because so often people are very much transactional. When they try to meet people, they try to, gather as many people as possible and I think a differentiator for you is that I've never seen you not be authentic and take time with people to actually be in community with them. And that's why it sticks. And so I think when you talk about strategic, the strategic part is the most important part that you just said, right? It's not strategic to like, oh, you can get me this, but it is that nothing is going to the wayside. It is, I'm seeing you for who you are and understanding that we all have a value regardless of where you are, what role you're in. And I don't want that to go past because I think that's a big part about how brands are successful and working at a nonprofit and
Yeah.
fundraising. That's even
Yep.
more important
Yep.
to be able to do.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the other piece is my therapist, who everybody on my podcast knows well because I talk about her often, she says growth begins where comfort ends. And everything you just laid out is that, right? Is that you have gotten yourself uncomfortable in
Yes.
order to grow. And the risks that you take in getting that discomfort have showed up for you. And so the reminder here is that if we stay too comfortable, we're not helping ourselves, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. It's actually funny you say that because one of my final comments on this question is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's
Love it.
what it's all about. Like when you get too comfortable, when you get too complacent, like I described it before as that itch in my palms, it's like,
Yeah.
you know what? It's time for me to do something a little bit different here and to really stretch out. So absolutely. I love that feedback. And I do acknowledge, I think that on the strategic relationship part, I think it's been a little easier for me because I'm a people person and I really try to coach the people I mentor and just meet them where they're at because sometimes it's a lot harder for folks. I mean, I am curious about other human beings. I really care about getting to know someone. I'm not tapping into you just because I need you to help me with this. Like, I really want to know you. Everybody's not like that. So that's where, I try as I mentor other folks that are coming up to really help them from where they're coming from. Because everybody's not, I'll walk up to anybody anywhere and start a conversation. That is
Same.
a really authentic conversation. And I know you and I are very alike in that way, but everybody is not that. So that building relationship part can be really hard for folks.
So you just mentioned, and you mentioned a couple times in the conversation, mentoring. Can you talk to me about why mentoring is important to you?
Oh, it's so important to me because look, I mean, we think we know how we're received. We think we know we're doing a good job. We think we know all these things about how we're showing up, but how we think we're projecting ourselves may not be the way we are being received in all the things, in the work product, everything. So for me, I love having a board of mentors. And you and I have talked about this before.
Yep.
I love having a board of mentors who can inform me on all of those different aspects of my life and my career, and who can be my truth teller on
Yes.
all things, and who also can be my temperature checks on things. So in my own house, my husband and my 3 young adults are mentors because they will, like, over the years, different job opportunities come and I'm like, oh my God, and they're like, Mom, now and it's like, let's sit down and debrief. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Like, they tell me the truth. They point out to me, Mom, you would not last 24 hours in a space like that or whatever it may be. So mentors are absolutely critical and critically important. And I think the other thing I often talk to people about is the fact that over the course of your life and your career, your mentors should and will change because you need different people in your life for different reasons and different seasons, right?
Yep, you do. And that's why annually I do an attention and goal setting session for anybody on the internet. And I just recently did it. And one of the things I said was looking at your personal board of directors, who needs to be moved to advisory status and who needs to be current board members. And looking at that each year, you need to see who has supported you and who hasn't, and also what you're needing as you're moving into your next step. And it's an important part of brand building, but just strategy, period. When I was a young mother, I needed other mothers. I needed people who are older mothers, folks who understood and knew, who'd be able to hand down stuff. It's thinking about where you are and so your stages of life and what your next step is. And if you can't figure that out, use the current board to help you move and then decide how you're going to shift it around. But it shouldn't be the same makeup. And like every other board, everybody has to have a term. And sometimes you bring folks back on, and sometimes they just go to advisory status and they're there. They're never disconnected, but they're not primary. They don't have to show up at all the meetings.
That's right.
A better term.
I love that.
Yes. So you mentioned golfing, but I don't know if this is your answer generally. What, Michele, do you do for fun?
So that's a great question. So I love sports. My husband gets a kick out of me because whenever you put me in any arena, stadium, or what I am like the most giddy person in the world. There is something about the cheering, the music, the sportsmanship, the team. I mean, it just makes me like get goosebumps all over. I love going to sporting events. So I am that mom who I follow my youngest son plays college football.
Mhm.
So from September through the end of November, every single weekend I'm at a football game. Now, it's NFL games. And my other son is in the National Guard as far as the color guard. So I
Mhm.
attend all of his outings. I love anything related to sports. So take me to a game. Now, you don't want to necessarily put me on a field, put me on a golf course, I'll play, but I love sports. I love attending sports, watching sports, and I love to travel. I
Mhm.
absolutely love to travel. So that's been really something that's been front and center for me over the last couple of years. And I love to go and have great experiences with my fam.
Oh, I love that. And my newest thing is I have learned to like football. So I've always not said I didn't like it. I just was neutral to it. And then I watched these two documentaries on Netflix. I love sports documentaries. They make me excited. Even though I don't play sports, I love sports. And so I watch Receiver and I watch Quarterback on
That
Netflix.
was good. They were
And
good.
I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm a fan now. So now my next goal is I need to go to a professional sports, a football game. That's what I'm going to do next season. I
All
have
right,
it
let's
all
do it.
there. I'm just saying, I'm like, you
Got
know
you.
what? Because it's got to be
Let's do
anyway.
it.
So we're going to make it
Let's do
happen.
it.
So one of the things I ask everybody is what part of your brand is something that you will never compromise on?
It's my integrity. I am really, really steadfast. I mean, I'm a lawyer by trade, right? I am all about doing the right thing in the right way. So I'm not going to take a shortcut. I'm not going to tell a white lie. I'm not going to skip a step. I am always going to take the right path. And if anybody, anything, any organization, if I'm in a place where I see myself being led down a different path, I'm out.
Hmm.
I'm just not going to do it. If I'm in a friend group where I'm starting to see behavior
Hmm.
that calls into question the integrity of the group, I'm out. I'm
Hmm.
just not doing it. And I have had some things happen over the course of my life where that integrity has been tested. And I'm like, you know what? Exit stage right at this
Hmm.
point. Not enter stage left, I'm exiting stage right. So that's what I would say for me is absolutely like a non-negotiable.
I love the additional context. I think that integrity is probably the word that's been used by most of my guests. But I like the context and the examples because oftentimes I think people will think, yes, integrity, right? If they ask me to lie on this tax return, I will not, right? But it's not just big things, it's small things that can be where your integrity shows up or not shows up. And so I like that you talked about the other examples of what's unacceptable, where your
Oh, it's
boundaries are.
true. It's
Yeah.
true. It's funny. My youngest son and I talk about this a lot because,
Mhm.
he's in college and he's been exposed to all these different groups and activities and all the things. And every now and again, I'll ask him why he doesn't do one thing or another. He's like, Mom, like, I really don't want to be with that group. Like that group, they don't always act right. And I'm like, good for you. Like I'm saying to myself, I'm not saying it out loud. I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know what? I passed on some good genes
Something
here. Like
stuck.
this
Something
something
stuck.
stuck because he intuitively knows better
Hmm.
than to
Hmm.
be somewhere that he knows something might not go right, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So it's really that's where we are.
That's one of my one of the reflections that I've had the most in the last 4 years, 3 years, is because my daughter, she's a sophomore at Spelman, and my son, he's now 12 years old. And although they are separated in terms of 7 years apart, they're working tandem things because middle school sucks. Everybody knows I've said this before. And college is a new experience, right? And seeing how they navigate friend groups and what they need to do to be involved and what they say no to is a testament to what they have learned and seen from us. And in some senses, I'm like, oh, did you learn that from us? But it's surprising to me to see it
Yep.
show up. But especially with my middle schooler, with the things that he is like, no, 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 it's not. Oh, look at me, pat myself on
Yeah.
the back. Yeah, all of these stages in life, we have to continue to figure out what makes sense for us. For me, the pandemic was a space where it was like that shedding, that is this aligned with what? Because I realized how quickly that things could be
Right.
what you thought it was going to be, and then the next day be totally different. And we keep having that experience of life being lifing.
That's
And,
right.
and
That's
so, yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's true.
Okay, my final question for you is this. Branding room only is a play on the term standing room only, and because I'm clever. And basically,
Wow.
my question for you is what is that Michele magic that is going to have a room filled to the gills with standing room only to experience about you?
I would say it's my authenticity around just other human beings. And I've been told this a lot.
Yeah.
People tell me often that, God, Michele, you just get people to talk.
Mhm.
People just tell you things. People just open up to you about things. And it really is because I am genuinely curious and caring and an empath at my core. And it's funny, I didn't see it when it was happening, but now when I look back on my career, like that's the reason I was able to get so many people to come to the ERG events or to come to my focus group or as an employment lawyer to talk to me and tell me everything in that investigation meeting or whatever it may be. That's the secret sauce. And like I said, so many people have pointed it out to me. I didn't realize it
Mhm.
until others pointed it out to me. But I know now, as I, get a little bit older, like I know that that's the thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that is definitely a pinpoint of the Michele magic. So, thank you for bringing your magic to the podcast and having folks hear about you. We will definitely make sure we put a lot of information about Just for Success, how people can support what you all do, and all the other organizations that you mentioned as well, and connect on your LinkedIn as well. Thank you for joining me. Everybody, tell everybody who needs to hear all of this advice, they all do, and spread the word. And remember to stand by your brand, everybody. Talk soon. Bye.
Thanks. Thank you.